All right. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Nicole Coppi. I'm the owner and lead teacher at Blue Heart Studio in San Antonio, Texas. And today I'm joined with Reverend Charles Fredrickson. Good to have you today.
Good to be with you again. Thank you.
So we're starting our second collaboration upcoming in June at Blue Heart Studio. Let's do a little recap of Lenten yoga. That was our very first collaboration, our very first experiment in bringing together yogic postures with Lectio Divina and Gospel. It got a really amazing reception. What are some of your thoughts and feelings about Lenten yoga?
Well, personally, it was just a great experience. It complemented my Lenten journey so well. As I shared at one of our circles, was that for my personal journey, I've had such a variety of experiences like fasting or avoiding certain things, but doing the yoga discipline along with being immersed in scripture and then meditating, was just phenomenal experience. And of course, the music. I like music, so the chant was good as well.
Yeah, it was very well received. The thing that really captured my heart about it was just in that space, in at Blue Heart, sharing the word of God and sharing the
Hmm.
gospel. We never asked anyone who was coming what their affiliation was, what their belief structure was. All of that wasn't necessary to converse about, but just being able to share the gospel with a multitude of people from different backgrounds and things like that was very enriching and inspiring to me.
And I think that's why yoga complements it so well, because as we go through each posture, each pose, one of the things you would say is to stretch yourself based on where you are physically. And I think that's the same thing in our spiritual journeys too. We're all being stretched in some way, and each is personally different. And so where I may be stretched is a little different than you, obviously. And so consequently, that was all the people that joined us had that same experience, I think, just wherever they were in their journey. So very thankful to have that um, privilege to be with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it worked so well. I mean, you're a wonderful collaboration partner, and we've been having such a good time collaborating that from
Yeah.
even the beginning, we were like, okay, well, what's next? It's not over, but what's
Exactly.
next? And
Exactly. And
so
so hence our this conversation today, and hopefully there might be some listeners that may be able to join us. So we're excited about presenting. Go ahead, Nicole. I'm sorry.
yes, no, I mean, we're excited to present exactly what's next. Like, this is definitely the inspiration that came from Lenten yoga. And so, next, starting in June, the dates are on Tuesday nights from 7:30 to 9 p.m. in studio. We're going to be doing something similar to Lenten yoga, which is going to be a 45-minute yoga practice with the breath work and the postures. And then we'll be moving into a contemplative reading of Song of Songs.
That is going to be our theme, Song of Songs, or some people might know it as Song of Solomon,
Mhm.
from the Hebrew canon or the Old Testament, if you're coming from a Christian perspective. And it is such a wonderful body of work in the Bible to really think about. So, Nicole, why did you want to do Song of Songs?
I mean, so the most of the reason I wanted to work with Song of Songs comes from Saint Teresa and my studies with Saint Teresa. And Saint Teresa has done a bunch of meditations on, I say a bunch, probably about six or seven, something like that, and talks about the way that Song of Songs lands with her. And it is
Mm,
interesting. She was alive during the Spanish Inquisition. And in the Catholic Church, a lot of the mystics and things were really under a microscope during the time of the Spanish Inquisition. She was living in Spain, and she was didn't have the Bible in her vernacular. So the it was all the Bible was in Latin, and
mm.
the church was against putting the Bible in the people's vernacular because they didn't want people then coming up with their own beliefs of what the Bible was saying, their own interpretations and things like that. And so she would listen to mostly either in church or in Latin. She would hear Song of Songs and she would talk about, and she wrote in these contemplations and meditations about what it made, like the kind of energy that it brought into her life, the way that it made her feel closer to God. And they're just beautiful. And so
Oh, yeah.
that is a big piece of what has really like struck me as interesting in Song of Songs. That and Song of Songs has such a grounded earthiness to it. Like it's
Hmm.
very much about nature, and it has this just very natural through line that I'm really interested in as well.
Yes, I agree with you. I think for me, the Song of Songs, it doesn't come up in our preaching or church calendar. So if you were to go to a church every Sunday, it would probably come up once, perhaps twice. But then it would be only very short portions of it. And so a lot of people just are unaware of the sensual nature of it. And people that may stumble across it just in reading would be shocked or maybe even surprised to know what is this doing in the Bible? Because so much of people's perception of the Bible is, of course, more law or more story, and this is poetry. It's sensual poetry, and it's wow, just fascinating.
Yes. Having said that, would you like to read a little portion of Song of Songs to give everyone listening kind of an idea of the tone of it and the feel of it?
Certainly. So I'm going to read from Song of Solomon or Song of Songs, chapter 2, starting from verse 8. And for those who don't know, there's different versions of the Bible, and that's based on how translators have translated the biblical Hebrew in this case. So this is the New Revised Standard Version. The voice of my beloved, look, he comes, leaping upon the mountains, bounding over the hills. My beloved is like a gazelle or a young stag. Look, there he stands behind our wall, gazing in at the windows, looking through the lattice. My beloved speaks and says to me, arise, my love, my fair one, and come away. For now the winter is past, the rain is over and gone. The flowers appear on the earth, the time of singing has come, and the voice of the turtle dove is heard in our land. That goes up to from 8 to verse 12. So
Really a
just
love
great, just great.
poem. Yes. So what in that kind of stands out to you or strikes you as interesting in that just one excerpt?
Certainly. Well, if you just approach the language, just the language itself, without any theological interpretation, is the the voice of my beloved is you hear that. That's obviously sound. And then you have this leaping upon the mountains, bounding over the hills. There's just excitement. And then you have this imagery of nature with the gazelle and the stag. And then this change because you get the sense that the figure is where? It's at my wall and looking in through the lattice, looking into me and looking into and then we get a sense that they have met because now arise, my love, my fair one, and come away. There's being spirited away, kind of like a Romeo and Juliet image of two young lovers kind of escaping into the out into the hills. And then we come to the flowers appear on the earth, the time of singing has come. So it's like they're together and this moment has come in their relationship. And you have to wonder, okay, what's going to happen? What's going to go on? So just all these little thoughts and questions and this intermingling of sensuality with nature and with just love in general. So it's just wonderful experience.
Yeah, I get a lot of joy. And it's funny that you say Romeo and Juliet because I was also thinking Shakespeare.
Uh-huh. Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
For
Yeah.
sure. Definitely
And
a
And to
love
think
poem.
this is kind of third, at least that's what the commentators suggest, and I would agree with them that it's post-exilic, meaning that it's after the Israeli nation has been brought back to Jerusalem and people are rebuilding. that it's third century BC, before Christ. So like, and scholars tend to think that it's a gathering of different love poems put together, but it's just a wonderful piece of our
Yeah.
Christian canon. So,
And there are different interpretations of Song of Songs, and
hmm
I think the reason that it gets left out of the liturgy and out of the church a bit is because it's almost like hard to place. There,
yes.
and it's hard to place, and there are so many different interpretations of Song of Songs. So our interpretation of Song of Songs, how we are approaching it in this series, is going to be a bit of the mystical contemplative, which is when I think of mystical contemplative, again, I'm taken back to Saint Teresa, and it's this like bridal mysticism where like Saint Teresa
hmm
was a nun, so in that bridal mysticism she was promised to God. She was promised to Jesus Christ. And so that union of her coming together with Christ was that mystical moment. And so there's this seeking of me seeking God and also God seeking me and these two things coming together into mystical union. And so I feel like our view is a little bit of that, as well as coming from this as a love poem,
hmm
as something that is just lovely and expresses desire and expresses healthy longing and expresses, all of this joy connected to the earth as well.
That's correct. Yes. And I think one of the reasons why it has such resonated with me is that if our senses are one way for us to be in touch with God and for God to be in touch with us. And just that portion that I read, the voice of my beloved, is to think about how our senses might be receptacles, receptors to God's love, to God's desire, longing to be interconnected with us. And vice versa, is our own senses being attuned to what is going on and around the world, and that there could be a God um, that is reaching out to us, that is longing to have a relationship with us. So it resonates very well in that way, so well.
Yeah, and that is our angle as we're coming into this
Mhm.
series is to move through the senses. So each week will represent a different sense and we'll really focus in and hone in on that sense. And I agree with you, the our senses are a way of engaging with the material world and
Mm,
a way of God communicating through us through the material world as well. And the bringing it into the yogic lens and into the yogic perspective is really to try to tune out everything else that we are bombarded with in day to day, moment to moment, so that we can truly deepen into our senses as a bridge and a connection to God. This is very easy in this world not to necessarily pay attention to things because our attention is bombarded in so many different ways all the time.
mhm.
So this practice in this series is really about setting the stage and creating a space where we can deepen into the senses as a way of connecting to God rather than being distracted by way of the senses, if that's making
Yes.
sense. Yeah.
I can't remember his name exactly, and I wish I could do a Google search while we YouTube or while we're on the video, but I think his name is Siri uh, Ramakrishna, who gives an image of our minds being like a tree with all these monkeys. Just chattering away and some receiving more attention than others. And then, each monkey is, you could really just spend time focusing on that, each monkey in your mind, and it could be really confusing or just overwhelming. So I like this perspective that we've taken with something biblical, scriptural, that I hope will resonate. Because I know for me, in yoga, to be able to go through the yoga discipline and then go into a stage of breathing and then meditation. It really helps to settle my mind in a way and hone in. And if I use that image or metaphor of the tree again, trying to um, place aside or try to have the monkeys be less loud so that I can be more attuned to that, to the trunk of the tree, to God's Holy Spirit that I want to be attuned to.
Yeah, absolutely. I have another quote. Now, this quote was taken from the introduction in my Catholic study Bible, and I'll just jump right into it. The Song of Songs, the Song of Solomon is one of the most difficult books in the Bible to interpret. With the possible exception of 8:6, God is never mentioned by name in the song, nor does the book convey an obviously spiritual or theological message. Beyond that, the poetry of Song of Songs is overtly sexual at times. Indeed, its expressions of longing for physical intimacy, while never indecent or obscene, are quite uninhibited.
Yes. Yep.
That end really got me. Like that, that the its expression for longing for physical intimacy, while never indecent or obscene, are quite uninhibited. And that it's never indecent or obscene. Like that to me is like there's something there for me, right there. Like there's
Hmm.
something that's really, really juicy that's right there for me because there's this language that this beautiful natural language and this beautiful longing and beautiful desire. And at the same time, through whatever lens we wear, that desire and that longing can often be kind of misconstrued as something that is either, for lack of a better word, sinful, or
Hmm.
that is a reflection of a negative aspect of oneself. And so, one of
Hmm.
the pieces that I really love about Song of Solomon is be able to rest in this longing and desire in a way that is natural. Not indecent or obscene, that is just kind of in its raw nature and its welcome.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
don't find that I can get into that in places often, if that's making sense what I'm saying.
Oh, I completely. Yeah, I mean, we could spend a lot of time discussing that aspect of it, but I would agree with the editors or the commentators who wrote that because, uh, you know, what we struggle with our bodies, and the projections in our culture as to what our bodies are supposed to look like and be like, and also what relationships are supposed to be like. And the wonder of Song of Songs is that it expresses this totality of being in such a deep relationship with someone in 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 not only physical intimacy, but in love, without it being misogynist or um, pornographic or anything. But I think culturally we really struggle with that, especially in this day and age when you can, get on pornography in what seconds, through all the various means that we have. And that, of course, is not Song of Songs.
Right.
That is, it's not pornography, but it deals with the deep relationships that we have. So I agree with you. It's not indecent or obscene, but it challenges, I think, us North American 21st century readers to think about what does relationships mean in our lives and our relationship not only with each other but with God.
Yeah, absolutely. A thing that continues to come up is these ideas of longing and desire. Like we will
Mm,
see throughout Song of Songs, these themes of longing and desire come up, and um, the the what is the difference between longing and desire? The thing that I think about is in the Buddhist tradition, they have something called near enemies.
mm,
And a near enemy is like this value that you would desire to have, like something like compassion. Like I want to be a compassionate person, but like just right next door to compassion is something like pity.
mm-hmm,
Right? How quickly something can go from compassion to pity, right? And
mm-hmm,
it's just they're just like, ooh, they're just a step away from each other. And when I think about these kind of like near enemies where it's like you're aiming for a mark, but you just hit like slightly left or slightly right, and you move into this near enemy is like this longing and desire, right? Like this longing and desire for God versus a longing and desire for something or someone else, or a longing and desire for, oh goodness, food, a longing and desire for something that you will not, it won't satiate what that true longing and desire is for. And
Yes.
how longing and desire can be helpful and healthy when it is aimed in the right direction.
Yes. Yeah. And I think one of the challenges for some of us too is how does it feel to be desired so much? And coming, of course, from the Christian perspective, that's one of the reasons that Jesus Christ is so meaningful because it's an expression of God's Trinity, God's love, sent and living with us because God longs so much to be with us and to have a deep relationship with us that's not broken. And um, that's a struggle too, is uh, because we would prefer sometimes not to think of ourselves being that desired. I think, you know, it's
Yeah.
uh, it's
When you
overwhelming.
Yeah, when you say that, and I think about unworthiness,
Hmm.
right? Whether that is like it could be a person, it could be God. Like there's a level of, to give oneself so completely and to have God give himself so completely is like just says, I'm just not worthy of that.
Right. Yep. That could ever be consummated. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think, getting back to your comment about near enemy too, I think the Song of Songs challenges us to think about what does it mean to be a partner? What does it mean to be in relation, not only with each other, but with with God and coming to terms with what that relationship means. It's hard.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, especially with God, I mean, when you have someone you're in relationship with and you see them every day, it's pretty obvious you're in relationship with that person. But
Hmm.
to be in relationship with the unseen, with the great mystery, with, that which, to hear the voice of God, what has to happen for you to hear and receive the voice of God? And that going into relationship with the unseen, with the great mystery is, I think, even more challenging because you have to look for, like, you have to look for out in the world the revelation of God every day.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's and if we are blind to see it, those who have eyes to see and ears to hear, and if we are blind to see it, we'll miss it all the time. Because we're waiting to hear something, or we're waiting to, like hear like internally or hear a voice, and it's like, but it's not necessarily that. It comes through a sensual expression. It comes through the senses, and to be awake to that. And
Yes.
that's, I think, one of the beautiful aspects of this series is to awaken into the senses and awaken into the language and the longing and the desire so that we can indeed open our eyes to be able to see the revelation of God, day to day, moment to moment.
And I think that's why the yoga tradition is helpful for that because one is to lead into unity, to be in unity with the divine, with God, so completely and fully. And you see that in so many of the Christian mystics. They often describe having a visceral, physical um, sense of union with
Hmm.
God. So just, a union that is so complete that they're satiated, that we talked about earlier, is that they're just so full. And yet they also feel so, um, getting back to a word you said too, is unworthy, you
Hmm.
know, this kind of duality of, wow, great, wonderful, and then, oh, what, with me? Of all people, with me? So it's just. I think the Song of Songs just portrays that well.
Yes, and the when you talk about the mystics, it's like the mystics will have these amazing mystical experiences, but they don't stay there.
Hmm.
You know, it's
Hmm.
like you move in and then you come out. And it's like, and then once you even try to describe the experience, words are not adequate. You know, it's hard to actually portray that experience and to tell someone about it or even write it down because
Yes.
everything falls short. And we don't get to stay there, unfortunately, as well.
No. Yep. Yeah. And that's the challenges of relationships in general, is that what may bring, for example, a couple together, um, is may not hold them forever. And, you know, I don't want to get into too much pain here, but anyway, yeah, it's just,
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah. The
challenge.
the word yoga means union to yoke
Mm,
together. And from from that Eastern perspective, you're bringing together all of the different aspects of yourself to be in this divine union with God. And we see that in the mystics in the Western world as well as these when we're coming into union with. And that's one of the things that I love about bringing all of this together is that they're the both the yogic lineage and the Christian lineage support this union.
hmm.
They're going about it maybe a couple of different, like a little bit differently, and but bringing the postures together with Song of Songs, especially through the senses, is in the yogic tradition we have something called pratyahara, which is the withdrawal of senses. And so it's like as you're moving into meditation, a piece of moving into meditation is the withdrawal of senses. But a withdrawal of senses is not necessarily withdrawing from, it's actually opening up to.
Hmm.
Right. So it's like the easiest way I can kind of describe this is if you've heard a noise like the clicking of let's say clicking of something or like a dryer, like the dryer that just keeps going and it's like all you can hear and it's starting to drive you nuts. Like all I
Mm,
can hear is the dryer. You know, that one sound that's just happening over and over. And it's
yeah.
like in that irritation of the sound is a resistance to the sound. Right? Like I hear this, I don't want to hear it. And what withdrawal of the senses is asking you to do is actually to open up all of your senses and invite everything in. And
Mm,
it's inviting in through the senses like this in this really beautiful eternal moment, eternal present moment where your senses are alive and awake to receiving everything in that moment. And it's this like timelessness of presence that exists in the
yes.
opening of the senses, which is also existing in the union. So I find that to be just really beautiful to start to draw in the senses with the Song of Songs along with the yogic practice.
I don't know if you remember, but I can't reference the exact place, but the Apostle Paul talks about being in the seventh heaven, is this sense of being fully engaged, but also recognizing this separation, the veil between us and the divine, is that yeah, that moment of completion when it all just comes together, you know? And
Mhm.
for him, it was an actual miracle where he was blind and then now afterwards he could see. So yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That makes me think of a question. I think we've talked about this before, but I'm going to bring it up because it's just an intriguing question for me. Is the veil? In yoga we talk about the veil as Maya,
Mm,
and my question is Jesus being the Son of God,
hmm.
right? Then, and I always this is just always a fun inquiry for me. Is was he present in his life in a way that the veil didn't exist?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
Because one of the famous scenes or events in the life of Jesus is when he's transfigured. They go up to a mountain and he brings a couple of his disciples, and there's two prophets, Elijah and Moses, and along with Jesus, and they appear to the disciples, and the disciples want to capture that moment where everything is just so open and but Elijah and Moses go into the background and it's only Jesus. And Jesus exclaims that, the time is not ripe for that kind of full unveiling. But it brings into that sense of Jesus being fully unveiled, but perhaps um, what would be the best way to describe it? Being obscured by our own vision of who he truly was. So the question back to you would be if any of the disciples had a clear vision of who Jesus was, would that veil be there? And
Sure.
I would suggest that if they truly had understood, their veil would not have been there and they would have seen Jesus in Jesus's full glory all the time.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really fascinating question. And that pulls me back into the moments that you see it.
Mm,
It's like,
hmm.
you can see it in a moment, and in that moment, it can be the dawning and the veil has dropped. And then in a sneeze, the veil is right back up.
Yep. Yes.
And it's like that. That's a beautiful question. Yeah, because I'm sure
Yeah.
that the disciples and even like, you just have moments of it. And it can be like a moment of deep forgiveness or a moment of like full receptivity of Jesus's forgiveness towards me.
Hmm.
And then, but
Hmm.
in that moment, and it's like you feel it in that moment, and then the next moment, unworthy.
Yes. Yes. Well, I mean, for me too is, practicing the yoga postures. One of my challenges is doing the uh, one of the poses, and I feel it in my shoulders and arms, and that's because that's where I live out my tense nature. And so, but then repeating those postures, there's a moment when it's not that way. I've really, my back is opened up, my shoulders have opened up, my chest is opened up, and it's kind of like, wow, it's just a great visceral feeling that, veil is up for a moment. And it doesn't stop me from putting tension back into my shoulders, though. But at least I know how to work through it and how to expand a little bit better next time.
Yeah, I mean, the physical practice is so important. The physicality and moving into a state of ease and a state of grace and a state of relaxation by way of
Hmm.
physicality. Like that's the only way I know how to let go. Like I remember when I first started practicing yoga and it was like, well, you just need to let go of that. And I'm like, how do you what do you do? How do you let go
Yeah,
of something? It's like, how do
right.
you let go of something in your mind, or how do you let go of an emotion? And it's like you can physically practice the art of letting go by letting go of tension in your body. And
Yes.
and it was such a moment of like clarity to be able to have an actual practice of letting go by letting go of tension.
Hmm.
And that still is not easy. It's like the in my breath work teacher's like, just relax. And I'm like, that's not helpful. That's not
I
helpful.
understood. I understand. And then I think that's why the Song of Songs is such a great introduction to it because we're talking about the physicality of human sexuality being lived out and expressed, and it never what you never get a sense of consummation, true consummation, but you really get a sense of living into that moment, living into that experience of relationship. And yeah, so I do think it's unique for each person and how it's lived out and expressed. It's just amazing.
Yes. When you say that, I think about intimacy.
Mm,
Intimacy.
yes.
That I read something that was like intimacy into me, I see.
Hmm.
And being seen. Like that
Hmm.
I believe is what intimacy truly is at the very core of it, is like really, really, truly being seen, and how uncomfortable that can be.
Yes,
Because it's not just seeing the beauty, it's also seeing all of the not so beautiful, and all of the challenging, and all of the hard, and all of the pain, and allowing someone into that. And then not even just someone, but on the higher end of it, letting God into that.
yes.
It's a tall tale. It's a tough
Well, it's two-way because you also are intimate with yourself in the sense of being knowing who you are fully with all your, quote unquote, unworthiness,
one.
all those things that make up who we are. So there's that being intimate, fully aware of yourself, but then allowing or being open enough to recognize that someone else, or in the sense of God, also seeing us as we truly are. It's
Mhm.
both, since the fact that we're all created in the image of God, yes, but then it's like, also coming to terms with this is what you see.
Yeah. And not only that, but it's like, this is what you see, and you love me regardless.
Yes, yes, exactly.
And that's when the unworthiness piece comes in. It's because I do know myself, and I do know those, the ugly parts, and the things that are in shadow, and to know, and I mean, that's not even to like to really
Yeah,
know that I'm loved anyway. It's like,
to fully come into terms with. Yes.
yeah,
And then it's always changing. We're not the same as we were yesterday, or, I certainly am not from 10 years ago. And
oh
we're
my gosh.
constantly growing as well. Indeed. I'm like, oh my God. Yeah.
You could only be having this conversation with the 41-year-old Nicole that sits in front of you today. Definitely not the 31-year-old Nicole, even though she wants to. You couldn't have.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. So yeah, beautiful. I mean, just such a beautiful conversation. It's so much fun to share time and space with you, and to
As
deepen
always, as
things.
always. Yeah.
So, a little bit more on the just to kind of sum up what we're offering for the series. It's an 8-week series. Again, it's starting on Tuesday, June 10th. We'll be meeting every Tuesday for 8 weeks from 7:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. The practice itself is about an hour. That's going to include the asana, the breath work. Asana means postures, the breath work, and the contemplative reading, as well as a nice rest. And then we're going to have a circle on the backside of it to discuss, whatever is in people's hearts, whatever's on their mind, whatever might have come up through the practice, or maybe not discuss anything else or nothing at all. So that
Mm.
circle time is just available for presence and deep listening. We also have that now on that eighth week, the very last week, we're going to take a field trip,
Hmm.
and we're going out into nature, and we're the details of that aren't necessarily as clear yet. We're considering a reading of Song of Songs, or considering listening to Song of Songs. So there's some considerations still to kind of bracket that field trip, but I think that's going to be a beautiful ending.
Yes, I completely agree. Because obviously, one of the things is you read Song of Solomon or Song of Songs, as it's commonly known, is that all the references to nature. And hopefully on the field trip, we'll have an opportunity to be in nature and to resonate with those words in that kind of experience. So all the senses. So the other one that we're including, is intuition.
Mhm.
And I think that'll be a good discussion as well.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes. I had a question that just came up, and I think I just lost it. That's okay. It'll come back around if it's important.
That's what we want is questions, because none of us is there to provide an answer unless you'll be helping us with the postures. But hopefully during the Lectio Divina, during the meditation time, lots of people, I hope, will come out with questions and seek God's presence in their life to get some of their answers. I'm not there to give answers. I'm
Yes.
hopefully getting questions to do. That's what I'm something I'm looking forward to because that certainly was my experience during Lenten yoga is everyone in their journey. And I know that God is always longing to be with us and to um, spend or to, how do I put it? To be so in our hearts and lives that we know nothing but being in that presence. Um, but it sometimes uh, encourages us to wonder what that kind of journey is like. So I look forward to it and hope others will as well.
I mean, I love sitting with the questions. I think sitting with the
Mhm.
questions is far more important than finding an answer.
Yep.
So yeah,
Yep.
so the we're inviting people to read Song of Songs along with us. The excerpts that we'll be using for the Lectio Divina are definitely not the full scripture. So in the show notes of this YouTube, I'm gonna put down like a little structure of reading Song of Songs, if that's interesting for anyone who wants to read along. Um, is there anything else that we have missed?
I was wondering if we should just mention that we're going to, at each session, include something to highlight the senses. So, for example, one of our senses is hearing, and so we're going to be using something to encourage that hearing, to be aware of that sense, and then also touch, um, also something, and then taste as well. So, we hope that we should highlight the fact that everyone, there may be some quote unquote adult discussion during the circle that may happen or may not. It all depends on how the circle unfolds. And so please be aware of that. So if that makes you uncomfortable, um, um, you're welcome to join us, except maybe not during the circle time. I don't know how to put it. And then also, we'll be using perhaps some incense when we do the smell. So there may be some people with olfactory issues that can't handle the smell or perfume or any kind of odor or perfume or anything like that. So we will be using that as well to heighten our senses,
What?
but also be
Axe
aware
body
of it.
spray.
I'm sorry?
Axe body spray.
Yes, Axe body spray.
No.
No Axe, please. Both for those who are watching, both Nicole and I have had military experience. She's a veteran, and I'm not a veteran, but I had some experience in the military, and there are some young men with Axe spray. It's like, oh my, please tone it down.
Oh, it's too
Oh,
good.
yeah, it's too
It's too
funny.
good. Well, I am very excited for Song of Songs. I'm super excited for this journey. Again, it's such a pleasure to collaborate with you and to have these conversations and to work together in the yoga room. So, just really looking forward to everything. Thank you for your time today and blessings on our upcoming journey and blessings on this day. Would you like to end our conversation with a blessing or a prayer?
I'm going to finish with a portion of Song of Songs.
Okay.
Okay. And this is chapter 3, the first two verses. Upon my bed at night, I sought him whom my soul loves. I sought him, but found him not. I called him, but he gave no answer. I will rise now and go about the city, in the streets and in the squares. I will seek him whom my soul loves. I sought him, but found him not. Look forward to everyone joining us. Thank you,
Beautiful.
Cole.
Thank you.